Alright everyone, there's an interesting link in the description. We start off today talking about the Uniparty. This is actually a bit of a rebuttal to what you see here. It's a link on Twitter, not archived of course, it's an actual video, making the pitch that the Democrats' overall goal is to import a bunch of people into the United States, the open border, the migrant crisis, asylum seekers, giving out work visas and stuff, deferred action under the DREAM Act, bring a bunch of people in, eventually legalize them so that they can vote in the elections or try to change election law so that they can influence politics. Certainly they are attempting to do this with the census. The fact is that somebody who's not a legal resident or citizen of the United States should not be polled by the census for voting purposes. It makes no sense. It's almost a little bit like the 3/5 compromise, or is it the 2/3 compromise? I can't remember which one's which. Sorry, history professors. In which early on, when the United States was incepted, the southern states wanted slaves to count for the purposes of voting. And the North, obviously, and then states where you didn't have slaves are like, well, that's not fair. You're going to import a bunch of people, and they'll breed, and then you're getting extra representation. It doesn't make sense. I mean, they can't vote, so why should there be representation? They had to do a compromise, which was looked down upon by many at the time, and lent itself to aspects of the Civil War, actually. It's kind of interesting because the Democrats are trying to do that again with migrants. I would agree with that. For census purposes, there are dirty dealings and shenanigans going on. You're getting an extra couple of electors, even though you've got 1 million people in your state that aren't even allowed to be there. They're illegally in the United States. They can't vote in the national or state elections, but for some reason they're counted as a citizen for the purposes of the census. It doesn't really make sense. Here's my rebuttal, though. The idea is, there are two problems with this particular idea. The first is relatively easy to understand, which is that over the course of decades, there's been no real push by the Democratic Party to legalize really anybody. They've attempted it in a half-assed manner, knowing that it would fail multiple times. Obama with his amnesty plan, etc. They've attempted it, but they've never seriously attempted it. It's basically, a political party sometimes will put forth an idea that it knows is doomed to fail just to get it on paper that they are in support of a concept. And so if your broad tent political party, which the Democrats are, includes a far-left component, that's like 10-15% of the Democratic Party is the real far left, the people that join Antifa and stuff like that. They all want blanket amnesty. You're not actually intending to give it to them, but you tell them that that's on paper what you want. It's the same with the student loan debt grift. Biden doesn't give a shit about your student loans. He doesn't give a shit about anyone but himself. He doesn't care if people drown in debt. In fact, he thinks that debt is a good thing. That's why he's a good Keynesian. He likes that idea. But the idea is that you promise people that that's what you want. You get it on paper by spewing out some bill you know is going to fail. He knew that his student loan debt forgiveness grift was going to get knocked down by the courts. He gets to put himself on paper as being for that and say, well, come on, man, give me 4 more years and a better court system and we'll get it done. You won't. It's self-evident that you don't even intend to try, but it sounds good to a proportion of the electorate. So the first part is that they're not actually serious about that basic plan. The second part, because they like their slave labor. They love having people in the country that are allowed to work but don't have full rights. They're not members of the militia. They're not explicitly covered under aspects of the U.S. Constitution. And it helps to sow discord. And discord, the government makes problems and then it sells you a snake oil solution. Or it claims that it has a solution then never follows through just so that you vote for them in election year. There's a reason why all of this is happening right now as we march towards November. The second part, though, is a little bit different. We already effectively have one-party rule in the United States. The idea that the Democrats have a problem with having people with R's after the name across the aisle is preposterous. You want a facade of having a two-party system. The Republican Party is not going to disappear under its neocon form, although the neocons are being embattled by actual populists and conservatives and small L libertarians at the moment, which I see as a positive thing. You already have what's called a Uniparty. We've seen it in action. When Mitt Romney and John Cornyn and all these others vote in favor of throwing away people's right to bear arms. When Republicans refuse to do anything about the U.S. government ostensibly, supposedly in the football team mentality sense, under Democratic leadership, spying on Americans. They reauthorized FISA. Censoring Americans. They're not doing anything about the NSA, the FBI, and so forth, CIA, going to tech firms and denigrating the First Amendment. They're not doing anything about the lawfare against their own presumptive nominee right now. You already have a one-party system. The neo-lib Democrats and the neocon Republicans are literally the same thing. They vote the same when it's in their interest to do so. They pretend to fight. They pretend to disagree with each other. And on topical issues, it's perfectly fine. If you have some kook in your party, that's what they would label them, who stands aside and won't vote for a bill, as long as the bill goes through, you're allowed to play Maverick, but it's just pretend. There are very few people in Congress that actually are outside of this. Number one, the cringe fringe left, which I find hilarious. Like the AOCs, the Rashida Tlaibs, they blindsided the Democrats by out-bluing the blue districts, and then some populists on the MAGA side. So people like Lauren Boebert, Representative Luna, Rand Paul, the Trumps of the world, essentially. But they're a minority. They're a rising minority within the party, but they are still, between them and the far left, there's still not the votes to stop the Uniparty from marching us on headlong downriver and selling us downriver towards more and more globalism, authoritarianism, and tyranny. So you already have the one-party rule. Why would the party want to destroy the other and permanently lock them out, increasing social alienation? It wouldn't make sense. People might actually protest and organize then because they'd be under more stress. No, you give them some neocon Republicans that'll put up a basic bitch doomed to fail fight against a handful of the most authoritarian bills, in the end achieving a compromise which is 90% what the Uniparty wants. And they do the big ask thing. Trump knows this. It's why they fear him. And you call it a day. Why do you think these people all party with each other? You get a couple of drinks and Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell will be making out and fuck. It's the way that they work. It's a big party and we ain't part of it. There are outsiders, but you've seen, like with the new transparent guidelines of the IRS, they are openly stating that they intend to do what they used to do subversively under Obama with the Lois Lerner IRS scandal and go after and audit people based on their political views. They're openly proclaiming that. I talked about that yesterday. Some people don't understand that this is going on. Used to be a national scandal. Now they say, yeah, we're going to do it real openly this time. At least they're being honest about their authoritarian intent. So, golf clap. At least you're telling us before you screw us in the ass chocolate style. They don't want a single party rule. They've already got it. You've got a single party that's carved up into people that are vaguely more conservative on paper. That's what they tell their constituents. They say Jesus, Jesus, and say, well, I really love guns. Not these ones, though. And then you have the neoliberals who talk a big game about wanting more welfare, student loan debt forgiveness, McGreen new spiel, and all this stuff. But they never do it, do they? No. They promote corporatistic policies, fascistic policies. If anything, the United States is tilting further and further into Mussolini land than anything else. Well, that's a big problem. We've already got the fusion of government and media. We've got that. We've got the fusion of government and big tech for the purposes of censorship and surveillance. We've got the fusion of government with supposedly private businesses through a convoluted series of grants and monopolization, all these things with pharma, the military-industrial complex, public education. We've already got fascism in the United States, or at least fascism light. It's just this time, instead of the brutalismus thing with Mussolini, with that famous the big uncaring, cold face of Mussolini there, they paint it bright colors. They paint it over in a pride flag so that people feel less dystopian about it. But it's still the same exact thing. You got a one-party system. They don't need illegals to do that. Now, they'll shut the border completely and say, well, we're going to throttle back on the slave labor. It's becoming too big an economic problem and draining the coffers. They don't care. They don't care if a migrant's in the country or not in the country. They see it as slave labor. They don't give a shit about them voting. They don't want them to vote. The last thing that they want is people participating more in civics, especially people who might come to the country, actually make it, and vote against those same neoliberal, neoconservative policies and want to be left alone. They want to convert the United States into a sort of corporate mess. Again, fascism light with a little bit of a happy color facade over it. It's basically Mussolini with a smiley face. They don't need to create a literal single party. They've already got it. It just comes in two flavors. It's like you're forced to eat ice cream, but you can choose between vanilla and chocolate. Well, but you're not allowed to eat Brussels sprouts. You're not allowed to eat a steak. You can only eat ice cream. Joe Biden commandeth it. That's about all. Peace out.